Okay, hierarchy. So there's two different types of hierarchy. There is hierarchy in like the general sense, like a system in which elements are put at various levels or ranks according to their importance. So think about businesses, politics, religion. All of these places have hierarchy. The military does. So for like a job, you have your CEO, then you have a manager, then you have your workers down at the bottom. But then with visual hierarchy influences the order in which the human eye perceives what it sees. This order is created by the visual contrast between forms in a field of perception. So visual hierarchy is very much like hierarchy, but instead of using roles, we're using perception and visual cues, and a lot of it's going to have to do with contrasting elements. So some ways to create visual hierarchy is using scale, color, typeface changes, location on page, and negative space. And we've been working with a lot of this stuff, so this shouldn't be new. So scale is pretty straightforward. You have just a larger typeface set to smaller ones. So we have this one, 1, 2, and 3. And a lot of times, I guess like the best rule is to kind of double the sizes of things. So say this headline is like set at a 40, maybe this one should be set at a 20. And then down here you can maybe work with like a 9 or a 10. It doesn't always work to double, but that's a pretty good like rule of thumb, is to double things to make sure you're getting the contrast between different levels of information. Color is really helpful because again, you're working with contrast. If everything in this text box is black and then all of a sudden you see a red color, that's going to change your perception. This is going to be the first order of, this is going to stand out a lot. It's going to be very vital piece of information compared to everything else that kind of blends in together. Same thing here. It's all this thin type, and then all of a sudden you get this bold italicized change in type, in the type, and this starts to create this depth, and you start to see that this type changes is a lot more important than all of this. Everything else is just a face in the face in the crowd. And then location. Oftentimes we read from left to right or top down. So where you put your information on your page is going to create hierarchy as well. And yeah, so we normally read from left to right, top down, but you could even create something if with enough like strategy and like really thinking about it, you can create hierarchy by just doing even like bottom up or right to left if you're using everything properly. And then lastly, negative space. And again, it's because you're working with this contrast. If everything is crowded and then you create this negative space around a word or like a sentence, then that's going to pop out more than if you were trying to get us to look at this word in the middle of this crowded text. And we saw this earlier, but again, like the reason why this is working is because we have this um, spatial hierarchy, because this is taking up, there's like, this is so uncrowded, and like we automatically go up to this title because down here it's crowded and there's a lot of things um, competing for our attention. So it's very obvious that this is our headline. This is the hierarchy number 1. This white title next to this black one. And then we'd probably go to here, these next artists. I'm guessing these are artists. I don't know how to pronounce these names. And then we'd go to this right here, this bit of information, because if we contrast this information with that, this information is kind of sitting on its own because of all of this negative space. And this would be the last hierarchy, these two paragraphs, just because they're the most crowded and they're smaller. And even from location, because left to right, we're looking at it from left to right. So again, each level of hierarchy should be signaled by one or more cues. And cues can be spatial or graphic. So we're looking at space. So other ways you can create cues is by indenting your paragraph or creating different types of leading. Different types of kerning also helps. Tracking and just placement on the page. So remember that, like, anytime you're trying to make something pop out away from the crowd, some of these will help. And then graphic, which we were looking at this, size, font style, color, change of typeface, and opacity. Those all contribute to these cues that kind of create hierarchy. So more examples of spatial hierarchy is like indentation. Like if you have a paragraph and then you indent something, we know like this is where to start on our paragraph. Leading, this helps too, because you're making a contrast between this and that. So this might be one piece of information like a biography, and then this might be something else. And then kerning, and then tracking up here, and then placement on the page. So all of this could be a poster where you're giving us all types of information and you're making them different because you're adding different spatial qualities to them. And then, yeah, so when you're creating emphasis and running text, you can use italics, boldface, small caps, changing color, or different fonts. But when you're doing that, don't one or two is enough, right? Like you don't want it to look like this, but don't overdo the emphasis in a running text. Like that's too much stuff going on. One cue is usually enough. Like right here, like you just get all cap size. Yeah, so I hope that kind of clears things up a little bit with hierarchies. So this one is really useful to look at because we have this big title and it's taken over 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, so we know that this is our first hierarchy just because of the size and how many columns it's taking up, how much space it's taking up. And then second is here because it looks like it's the second most, it's bold and it's at the very top. And then I think this information would be third because it's kind of like on its own little piece right here. And then I think this would be the last thing this designer wanted us to see. Because if you're looking at this from afar, you want to be able to get your attention. You want your attention to be drawn to the title. And then when you get closer, you want to see the next bit of information. And then when you get closer again, you want to see another set. And once you've been like captivated, then you're going to sit and read everything in this paragraph. Okay, I hope that helps everyone out with hierarchies. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions about these or if you want more examples of posters with hierarchy. Alright, later everyone.